Walker. This is a Womanist conversation, and this is episode 1. So today I'm joined by my special guest, Nadia Gray. You can give him a wave.
Hello.
Jamey Younger.
Hello, how are you?
And Erisel Cruz.
Hi.
So for those of you who are unfamiliar with womanist, is a term that was coined by Alice Walker in her book In Search of Our Mother's Garden. It's a womanist prose. So Walker offers 4-part definition, which has to do with spirituality, creativity, oppression, and respect. So in the conclusion of her book, she says that womanist is to feminist as purple is to lavender. And she also talks about how womanism is for women who love women sexually or non-sexually. So then when we move on to womanist theology, it's connected to God's liberation, justice, and self-empowerment. So the 4 founders were seeking wholeness in God. So of course they were going to seminary in the 80s and the early 90s. So of course they were generally the only Black women, if not Black people, in their classes. So they kind of joined together to talk about, you know, the injustices and discrimination that they were feeling even within what's supposed to be, you know, a just place, which is what you would think about seminary, but we all know how that goes sometimes. So tonight we're going to delve into a topic that I named Without Women, and we're going to look at 2 Samuel chapter 20, verse 1 through 20. So a little bit of the backstory, we have Sheba, and he was a troublemaker, and so he was kind of stirring up disloyalty against King David. So David, he basically wanted Sheba found because he didn't want him to, you know, cause any more greater harm to Israel. So he sent his army general, which was Joab, and his army to basically go after Sheba. And so Sheba, of course, ran away, because who wouldn't? Because you got these crazy people coming after you. So he went to a city, and it was a fortified city. So of course, Joab followed after him, and the story goes that the army was trying to break down the fortified walls. So while they're breaking down the walls, we have a wise woman that even amongst all this noise and all this chaos, she's just like, listen, listen. And so even though you would think with Joab, he's this basically an armed killer, and so he immediately still stops. And obviously, you know, he's kind of familiar with following wise women and their counsel. So he actually goes and listens to her. And so she kind of talks about how their city is a city of justice, and a lot of people go there to seek justice. And it's basically the mother of Israel. So in that, he actually negotiates with her, like, you bring me Sheba's head and we will go away. And that's exactly what she did. She went back, talked to the people in the city. They cut off his head. She delivered it over the fence, and Joab and his army basically pieced out and left. So with that being said, I think the part that I want to focus on tonight is basically listening to the wise women in our lives and knowing when to raise our voice so we can be heard. So I think with that, and that always, when I heard this story, it reminded me of the Audre Lorde quote, "Your silence won't protect you." So I think that's like the first thing that I thought about when I heard that story. Because I would just think about, you know, even though all this chaos is happening, everyone was probably going to get killed in the whole town. So it's like, out of all the people, and we got to think there must be some, you know, big, strong men in the town. And you have this one woman that's coming to the gate. And it's like, listen, listen. And despite, you know, she's probably had, you know, some kind of upper position. But, you know, back in the time that we're talking about, you know, women were still seen as like second-class citizens. So anyone have anything to say?
I did. Sorry, I just wanted to let you finish. I think one of the things that really impacted me with this chapter was that just before this happens, we get the story of what Joab does to Amasa,
Mhm.
and how it's just an immediate, you're about to get stabbed. Like there's no question about it. It's just like 1, 2, 3. Hey, how you doing, my brother? Stab. And so we are kind of presented with this violent man who is kind of just like, David says jump, so I do it.
Yeah.
Right. So he's very much the attack dog. And so I think about the bravery that this woman has to have, because she's an elderly woman. She knows that she's not going to be able to take him. And so she goes to him, and it's just like, okay, just immediate, we can have a conversation. It's not that same level of violence that we get just a couple of verses prior. And so that was really powerful for me, just to kind of, I guess, see how he saw her as an equal, even though the rest of us probably are just like, what are you trying to do? Are you crazy?
Yeah, because I can imagine even in this time where, even the people in the town were probably like, what are you doing? And like, one of the major virtues in womanism is that like justice and like courage. So just to even have the courage to even like, this wall is about to fall. Like these people are about to come in here and probably slaughter us all. Like who's going to save us? And you have this
Right.
one like lowly woman that's like, okay, it's going to be me. I'm going to save us all.
But I think in her case, her wisdom was her strength. So they may have had the physical strength, but her wisdom was her strength.
Definitely.
For
And
sure.
that's like another, part of that womanism is about, recognizing that wisdom. Because I just think about like, he didn't even have to listen to her.
Yeah.
Just someone saying, listen, listen, like how many times have like, we've told our children to like listen and they're just like, yeah, I
Every
can't
day.
even hear
Right.
you. So the fact that he, she even commanded enough respect that he would actually stop and listen to her, like, okay. And she's like, let me tell you what your servant has to, basically tell you today. And so the fact that, she was able to even humble herself to be like, let me tell you, I'm your servant today. Like, just listen to this negotiation and like whatever happens, happens after this.
Right. Yeah, to be able to acknowledge, she is the servant. Um, and I feel like the whole thing was just powerful with the woman being able to even stop the crowd and have the men listen to her in regards to what was going on, especially considering that they were so violent, and she was able to soothe their souls enough to stop and actually pay attention to what she had to say.
Yeah. And then I think about, of course, in the Bible, there's like a bunch of women in the Bible who sometimes don't even get names in the Bible. They just say like this woman, just the wise woman. And like, we never really even get a chance to pay attention to them or really even get to know them as we do all the men in the Bible. Like when I was looking for a woman to kind of focus on, and I actually read, a book called I think it's called The Gathering, and it's about like a womanist church that was started in Texas. So it's like one of them were preaching about this actual scripture, and that one really stood out to me, that you have the woman that is basically kind of, telling her own, the narrative of the city, and recognizing that, it's our job usually as women to take care of the community.
I agree. I think that's part of
history that we kind of neglect. We don't have that perspective, that the woman or the female perspective. So it's almost like it's there, and we know it's the glue that's holding everything together, but we don't, once the glue dries, it's invisible. You don't see it anymore.
And it just reminds me of even like the civil rights movement where, it's like the women did all this work in front of the scenes and behind the scenes. But like when we think about the civil rights movement, we're like, Martin Luther King, like not to diminish what he did, but you have like, who made the flyers for all the stuff?
Who wrote
Like
the
someone
speeches?
had to have stayed in the church to make all the flyers. Who passed them out? Because it's not like you had like, I can't like text messages like, hey Rosa, guess what we're doing tonight? So it's like, someone had to pass out these flyers, and like that was a dangerous job in itself, just to be, disseminating something that's like, okay, we're gonna go against the system, which is basically what I imagine just what this wise woman was doing, like going against the system.
Right.
Like we know what the system is. It's going to be violent. We're going to get slaughtered. Like someone has to stand up and go against the system and go against what the norm would usually be.
Absolutely.
And I know earlier, Jamey, you were talking about, Angela Davis.
Angela Davis, yeah. She was
And
definitely I feel like a great asset when it came down to the civil rights movement, and being a Black feminist, standing up for social justice and the inequalities that was going on back then, and even current. She still fight for our for equality.
yeah, definitely. And, that piece always about like justice. And I imagine like, even if, the people didn't listen to the woman and they still got slaughtered and everything, like I imagine that, she would still probably be just called the wise woman, because at least she tried. Like even if
Right.
you fail in your attempt for justice, at least they tried. And they tried when no one else kind of would do anything else. And like just recently we watched the biopic of Fannie Lou Hamer, and it definitely like brought up, like when I was thinking about connections, it brought up, thinking about her, and she was like abused mentally, physically, emotionally, and yet she was still going to take care of her community. She was still going to stand up for justice. She was still going to be, courageous. She was still going to let everyone hear her voice, even though, she wasn't even educated really, because of course you're working in the cotton fields, no one's worrying about an education. But I always see the video, and she would go in there on the stage, she got her little handbag, got her Sunday church dress on, like has her hair all done up, and she goes on stage and she's just like, I may not be the most educated, but guess what, I'm gonna tell you like it is. And so that also reminded me of that. And I think there's always like so many women throughout history, and even even us, like on this call, like we always have to, I mean, Erisel, I know you don't have kids, but you're in like a caregiver thing with your mom, with everything, and a lot of times we put ourselves on the back burner worrying about everything else. Because you got to imagine, like, if they didn't negotiate with the wise woman, she would have been the first one killed, because she's right by the wall. So, we're always putting ourselves in the forefront and trying to take care of everybody else and trying to take care of this and that. And then we're like, we don't even have time to really worry about ourselves, because it's like everyone else is going to be taken care of. You're going to live. I might like perish, but you're going to be taken care of.
Yeah. And I think that's just our narrative. It's, like self-sacrificing. It's almost like we're always going to be like the martyr of everything. Historically speaking, we put ourselves before everyone else. You know, even, you know, Mary with Jesus, you know, she's watching her son die on the cross. And, you know, as a mother, can you imagine you're standing right there watching your child, you know, get killed? It's like you are hurting your own self, you
Yeah.
know, for the sake of the greater good.
Mhm.
You know, because if that was me, you know, I'd be like, no, you know, I'm trying to get my child down, like, no, you know, but she really had to have that, you know, wisdom and that strength to understand that, like, I have to step back and allow this to happen in order for something greater to happen.
Yeah, and then when we talk about, narrative, I think that's just the thing, like now, like with womanism, it's all about kind of controlling your own narrative. So I think, like, of course, like Mary couldn't control what was going to happen because it was just what was going to happen. But I think this is a good opportunity for us to then be like, okay, we're going to control what happens to us. We're going to control our own narrative and be able to tell our own stories.
Right. I
Because
think that
oh, go ahead.
I think that ties in, like, in what Angela Davis said, like, I am no longer accepting the things that I cannot change. I am changing the things that I cannot accept. So, like, us as Black women, we try to fix everything. And
Mhm.
unfortunately, that's kind of impossible, right? Um, and as Black women, we carry so much on our shoulders every day, even in our workplaces. And with racism and unequal pay and all of that stuff.
All the isms.
Right.
Basically.
I mean, like, it's really time. Like, I agree. Like, it's time for us to take a stand and,
Mhm.
continue to fight for that.
Yep, change the narrative.
Right.
I kind of want to change the narrative for this wise woman. So, Nadia, I think that you touched upon a really beautiful thing, right? So she's
Mhm.
acting very much as a martyr in this moment, but I think she's also acting as a leader. This is an entire city, an entire fortified city, which is to say that there are male leaders there.
Right.
They saw, they're living in plains, so they saw these people coming. They knew what was happening. They knew they had Sheba there, so they knew that someone's going to come after him. How many people got together to have a conversation and try to strategize and say, what are we going to do? How are we going to do this? For me, it's like, she's not just the wise woman. She's not just this nameless individual. That's her title, right? We don't know what the Hebrew word for that would have been. We can only imagine, but if it translates the wise woman, that's her title. That's who she is. Just like someone is a mother, someone is a sister, someone is a wise woman. She's a shaman. She's a leader in her own way. So she's coming and she's saying, this is what I'm going to do. And y'all are going to follow this. How many people probably like argued with her, was just like, no, you're insane, tried to hold her back physically as well as verbally. And she's like, no, this is what's going to happen. Imagine the power that's radiating off of this elderly, I'm assuming is an elderly woman, because when they're wise, they're usually a lot older.
Mhm.
And this is grandma here, and grandma saying, I'm going out and I'm going to have a conversation with these fools. I'm going to talk to them so they can calm down and we can have a conversation. We can survive this because there's no need for extended violence. And if all it takes is one life, bet.
Right.
And then it's like the confidence behind it all, like what you're saying, to even be like, he's gonna listen to me. Because you had to have been confidence, because you're not just going out there like, listen. Because I mean, it's a bunch of noise already going on. So
Right.
she had to go out there like blaring, like, listen, like raising her voice. And it's
Yeah,
like,
she
I
definitely
think
was
sometimes,
assertive.
what'd you say, Jamey?
I said she definitely had to be assertive.
Yeah. I
She
even say
probably was one of their
even
grandmas.
aggressive.
They're all family anyway, right? Like
Yeah.
all the different tribes, it's all one clan.
Right.
So they probably knew each other. It's like Joab, I used to watch him.
Yep.
I took care of him while the rest of his brothers were doing who knows what.
But like that, then that, like, within, like, a lot of times Black and brown communities, like, we have that respect for the older people though.
Mhm.
So I can see that. I can see what you're framing it with, like, her being an older person, because I'm not saying he wouldn't have listened to a younger woman, but it's a type of confidence and wisdom that comes with getting
Right.
older.
Very true.
Because I don't know if
And
it
that
was
plays
a
on the
little
male
cutie
ego
pie.
too.
What'd you say?
I said that plays on the male ego too. What
Yeah.
man is going to try and violently attack an old lady? None of them.
And I
I
think
don't know. He was a little crazy. Joab was a little crazy, so he might have.
Yeah, he was a little touched.
and so Shakita, what you were saying about that actually resonated with me. So like the community, and we're used to having almost like matriarchal, community. So the grandmothers, the moms, they keep those traditions going. They, get everyone together for Sunday dinner. They get everyone together for cookouts. They get, like they are the glue. They hold it together. So of course, like that's why I think he did respect her and did respond to her in the way he did. And the other, whoever was in the back, sitting in the back seat, just watching this happen, they're like, she's got it, because the women, they are the leaders. They're the silent leaders, but they are the leaders. We don't get the name, we don't get the celebrity of it all, but everyone knows, like, when something goes down, who do you go to? You go to grandma first, you go to mama first.
Yeah.
Like very rarely, like, it just makes me think about, even when people have kids, like usually the preferred parent that the kids always run to is the mother.
The mama.
I
And
mean,
daddy can be sitting right there.
Oh, my nephews are always running to me when my brothers do something crazy. TT, can you? I'm like, nope, we're gonna have a conversation, but calm down.
But they recognize like who the real leader is. They're like, it's not my dad.
Yeah,
it's
Right.
you.
I was watching this video, this little boy, the dad tried to offer him candy. And I guess the mom told him prior he could not have the candy. And he's like, you can listen to me. It's okay. He was like, Mommy said no. He said no. And he stuck with that because he knew who was in charge at the end of the day.
Yeah, I remember that. And he was just like walking away like, no, like you're not gonna get me caught up with this mess because you're not the real boss.
Oh, like, tell me none of your kids do this. Whenever any of my nephews doesn't get their way with me or my brother or their moms, they immediately go to my mom.
Of course.
Grandma will fix it all.
Yep, Nana. That's what Nana.
That reminds me when your little one was like, Nana, can I have a vitamin? And then her older sister comes in, you already had a vitamin. But it's like they know who's gonna, like, who the real boss is and who's gonna spoil them. It's Nana, the older person.
And they know because parents are not gonna fight.
Yeah.
Gonna fight Aji. That's what Aji is, what they call her. But it's like, no, I'm not. But gosh darn it, stop.
Right.
Yeah. So anyone have any final thoughts on the subject?
Shout out to all the silent sisters who are out there doing the thing, not being named.
Right.
And I do have a scripture about that. So I was talking about, that we're carrying that wisdom and the values, those traditions that are, carrying along from generation to generation. So basically we're keeping memories alive. And there's a scripture, Proverbs chapter 10, verse 7, the memory of the righteous is a blessing. So it's like we are the blessing because we are the ones keeping those memories alive. Because if you put it in function, it's always mom, the grandma, the aunties. They keep all of those things happening from generation to generation. Yeah. If I didn't take pictures, you wouldn't see any pictures of me or my family ever. You wouldn't even know we existed. If I relied on my husband. When anything happens in a family, like if one passes away and they have the obituary, they always go to a woman. you know,
Mhm.
the aunt, the cousin, the grandma, someone, because they know they're keeping those memories.
Mhm.
Right.
And like, like just like the historical remembrance, like that's like part of our cultural heritage though, with
Mhm.
like
Oral traditions.
even, setting us up for what we should do next, how we should carry ourselves, how we should live, all of that. And it's always
Mhm.
the grandmothers and great grandmothers that let you know what to do. Like
Mhm.
the grandfather, he's just there. He's living. He's just there though. Like you might could ask for like $1 or $2 off of him, but if you want to know, like, is this person my great grandmother and who's my
Mhm.
cousin and all this, you go to the grandmother. Like
Mhm.
grandfather, he like, I don't know, sweetie, you want a candy or something?
$1?
I could take you over to the corner store, but that's not the information we want to know. Yeah, but that reminds me when you're talking about, other things that happen in the Bible, because I remember, you know, learning that there was women that were like, walking along with Jesus and being his disciples.
Mhm.
But it's
Right.
like most of them aren't even named. And when they talk about the stories, they never talk about those women. They're just like,
Yeah.
he had 12 disciples. That's it. That's all you need to know. And then you read it and you're like, hold on. This says, and then the women were using their money for them
Mhm.
to travel.
Yeah.
And y'all didn't think that was important. And they were like,
Well, they
talking to
wouldn't because
Jesus
most of them
like,
were prostitutes.
huh?
They wouldn't because most of them are
Yeah.
prostitutes. You know,
But
it's like all we get is that throwaway line, like he's hanging out with tax men and prostitutes, and you don't think about it, and just like, who are his disciples?
Right.
because it's
Right.
not like his disciples were like, he always chooses like the least of these to
Mhm.
like work through. So it's,
Right.
you got to think if you have disciples with you, they're not going to be like the president. Well, can't even say the president because that's not always a good thing, but
No.
I digress. So,
That's another show.
yeah.
Right.
But I definitely, was interested when I saw that because I'm like, man, now I kind of want to delve into all the
Mhm.
books that are not inside of the actual Bible, all the lost books. Because it's
Mhm.
like, are these
Dead
people
Sea
actually named?
Scrolls.
Like, I want to know about some of these people that were actually using their money to travel. Like, if we go on a trip and I'm using my money for us to travel, like, y'all better talk about me because I use my money for us to
Right.
travel. Like,
The
Erisel, tell
Book of
everyone
Mary
that I'll pay for your
Magdalene
plane ticket.
is pretty
Exactly.
interesting. I'll say that. Book of Mary Magdalene and the Book of Bartholomew. Those were the most interesting ones out of the all of the ones that I've read that aren't in the Bible.
See, if I've only like begun to like, of course, delve into it because, I got all the other reading to do. So then I'm like, yeah, I have like a whole list of books that I just like, I want to read these one day, but maybe this
Maybe
summer or
Audible.
something.
Maybe
Yeah.
it's on Audible for
You
you.
just you make a pile, you put your hand on top, and just absorb it through osmosis. Is that how it
Mhm.
I
works?
I wish.
Is that how I can finish up, grad school and my
Yeah,
certification?
total 100%.
That would be awesome.
But guys, thanks again for joining me on this conversation. It was a good
Absolutely.
one. Thanks for being my guest. And so now you guys can go and you can also spread the word about womanism.
I have been. I've been sharing a
Womanism
little
of
bit
Yeah.
Silent Sisters. I'm
with my
gonna write a whole book
trainer.
about it.
Because it's a real interesting thing. And
Mhm.
it's a real interesting when you get into the womanist theology and looking at different things that you would have never thought about. It is a really interesting lens to look at the Bible in. And of course, we usually get the male view because most pastors and
Right.
preachers are men, so we usually only get that view. So it's a real interesting thing to kind of flip it and look at what would a womanist say, and that could be a womanist that's a man or a womanist that's a woman.
Mhm.
So
Right.
it's just
1,000%.
interesting. So yeah, I could recommend some books to you guys sometime that you can read.
I love that actually, especially because sorry, I'm just gonna interject one. I there was a Bible study lesson that I did years ago with some friends, and it was talking about, I'm speaking of silent sisters, the silent women in Jesus's line, well, in Joseph's line
Mhm.
that lead to Jesus, and it's just like, without these women, Jesus would have never been here, because
Yeah.
Joseph
Right.
here. And I would love if there are any books out there that kind of just like specifically speak on them, speak on Rahab and all of the others.
Oh, Jamie, you kind of bought me a book that says about the women in the Bible. I can't
Mhm.
remember the name of it, but I'll take a picture of it and send it to you later.
Bet. Okay.
Okay.
Yeah. Thank you.
And a great book, God is a Black Woman. Wonderful book.
Yes, that's one that I definitely want to read.
For
God is
sure.
a Black woman.
Awesome.
Okay, well, good night, ladies.